Hello, today I will be discussing the organization named the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. I will be referring to them as their acronym CISA. So first of all, let's discuss who CISA is. CISA is a federal agency that collaborates with many organizations to understand, identify, manage, and reduce risks to the United States cyber and physical infrastructure. Through their collaborations, they aim to assist in building a diverse workforce in cybersecurity, serve as a national hub for real-time data sharing relating to physical and cybersecurity threats, and collect and analyze risk assessment data to prioritize risk management strategies. Now, CISA does state many specific approaches and how they handle their cybersecurity. However, I think we can broaden it into two main categories. The first being a strong focus on risk awareness and assessment. The second being providing real-time threat data and creating response strategies for cybersecurity threats/attacks. Okay, let's discuss their first main approach to cybersecurity, which is a strong focus on risk awareness and assessment. When CISA works with an organization to help strengthen their cybersecurity, they like to implement a framework core that contains 5 functions. This category will focus on the first two functions named Identify and Protect. First, CISA likes to identify what organization assets are at risk. This can include assets such as customer data, their own financial data, and any authentication credentials. Next, they like to identify what kind of threats can risk damage to these assets. This can include denial of service attacks that can stop an organization from providing their services, malware like ransomware that can encrypt or steal sensitive data, or man-in-the-middle attacks where credentials or data can be stolen during transfer between two parties. Finally, CISA likes to identify vulnerabilities that can expose these assets. These can include weak or old passwords that have not been changed, lack of proper management to their software, or a lack of proper management to their networks and servers. Okay, so let's focus on why CISA's risk assessment is effective in strengthening cybersecurity. First, let's acknowledge the importance of identifying what assets are needed to be protected. In my example here, we have data relating to an organization's customers. This data can contain sensitive data like a customer's address, social security number, or credit card number that they have in file. This asset can be at risk of a threat. It is important to acknowledge what these threats can do to damage an organization's assets. This example shows a ransomware attack that can encrypt customer data, which can prevent the organization from accessing said data, as well as the customer's data being potentially compromised and stolen to be used maliciously by the attacker. CISA then can point out what vulnerabilities can be exploited in order to gain access to these assets. In my example here, I have a cracked password as the vulnerability. An attacker can log into a network by brute forcing the password or by using some sort of rainbow table. There is also the vulnerability of credentials like passwords being exposed from a separate database breach, as well as these credentials being used once without another form of authentication. With proper identification of assets, threats, and vulnerabilities, CISA helps guide these organizations into taking steps to protect these assets. As an example, if a password was exposed in a data breach, maybe the next step to take to protect these assets is to change all passwords and implement an additional form of authentication. Alright, now their second main approach to cybersecurity is creating response strategies for cybersecurity threats/attacks. This approach focuses on the other three functions, which are named detect, respond, and recover. As a cybersecurity attack can happen to anyone at any time, it is important for CISA to implement some sort of detection measure when a real-time threat or attack occurs. CISA provides different types of tools to detect threats like malware with their Advanced Malware Analysis Center and intrusions in networks with their network monitoring tool named Malcolm. They also provide many tools such as Untitled Goose tool that keeps audit and activity logs for the organization. Next, if a cyber attack were to occur to an organization, CISA provides many different response plan documentation to guide an organization on how to respond to an attack. Their response plan documentation provides guides on what kind of response to have within 8 hours, 24 hours, or 48 hours after an attack occurs. Here I listed a few examples, such as keeping the threat within some sort of containment after 8 hours of the attack, identifying and installing immediate patches to vulnerabilities that were exploited by the attacker after 24 hours of the attack, and identifying any other infrastructure problems that can cause another attack to occur after 48 hours of the attack. Finally, CISA does provide more documentation for an organization to be able to fully recover from an attack. Some examples seen in these documents include collecting and preserving data that was stolen to properly inform the right authorities of the attack, rebuilding and reconnecting new systems for a return to operation, and proper testing of a network to see if the operations can run normally. Finally, it is important to discuss why these response strategies are effective. Having detection tools can help an organization to initiate a response plan more efficiently and can help identify the type of threat more effectively. As an example, we can have an attacker that gains access through some sort of backdoor. We can have authentication logs that can show how many login attempts have been made, as well as use network detection tools like Malcolm to identify IP addresses that are unknown to the organization. With proper detection tools, a response plan can be initiated to be able to properly stop an attack in their tracks and help mitigate any further damage from occurring. In our example, based on the response plans provided by CISA, we can first isolate the attacker, identify how they got in, and install any patches or close out any unused ports that allowed the attacker to gain unauthorized access. Finally, following through with a recovery plan provided by CISA can help the organization regain some of what was lost and help them get back onto their feet. As an example, we have the organization collecting data relating to the attack, rebuilding systems with any backups that they have, and testing their operations to see if they can operate back to a normal level. This was my presentation on CISA. Thank you very much.